It Happened at Evening by Mazur-Yanai, a liturgical work of the 7th century edited from the Geniza fragments by Israel Davidson. The nation called Jew, the Yudin, because they think the name of God, Yamadin. In truth they are called one, because they constantly unify the one. Rejoice in fear and trembling, serve him with awe and quivering. Come forth with praise and thanks. Call out to Torah and to testimony. The multitudes will not say holy above until the believers say blessed below. And when they stand and whisper in their mouths below, standing, the angels will slacken their wings above and recite, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The Attarouthi treasure, a silver dove. The dove is dated from the late 6th century and the early 7th century, made in Attarouthi, Syria, from the Byzantine culture in the medium of silver. It has the overall dimensions, with wings, of 3 5/8 by 6 1/4 by 2 11/16 inches, and the body only of 2 7/16 by 2 7/16 and 6 1/4 inches. It's classified as silver metalwork and is a part of the permanent collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, on display in Gallery 999 with the Ascension number 1986.3.15. The Met offers the description. The dove, with wings spread and feet tucked up as if in flight, represents the Holy Spirit that appeared over the head of Christ as he was baptized by St. John the Forerunner, John 1:32. Early authors mention the presence of doves over altars and churches from Constantinople to Tours in France. This is the earliest known example of the type, originally a small cross hung from the loop in its beak. Dr. Stephen Murray of Columbia University gives this context for the collection that the dove is a part of. The Attarouthi treasure contains 10 chalices, 3 censers, a wine strainer, and a dove representing the Holy Spirit. The treasure was found in a storage jar near the ruins of the ancient city of Attarouthi. The city was discovered in the first decade of the 20th century near the present-day region of Syria called Apamea, near the modern town of Attarouthi and Paran. The dove is a 3-dimensional representation of the Holy Spirit. Its wings are hinged and decorated on the underside, implying that they were meant to be seen from below. The silver dove is evidence of a tradition described in many early Christian and Byzantine texts of a dove being hung over the altar. The Russian pilgrim Anthony of Novgorod described a dove hovering in the apse of the Hagia Sophia when he visited Constantinople. In modern times, we widely regard the areas of Turkey and the Middle East to be Islamic nations, their leadership and culture saturated in the ways of the Muslim culture. However, the seat of the great Byzantine Empire was in these very countries, the city of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, and was predominantly Christian. Before Istanbul was Constantinople, it was Byzantine. The Byzantine Empire was in some form of existence from 395 to 1435. Its contribution to the development of Western civilization is both under-recognized and unparalleled. The eastern power of the Roman Empire, Byzantium, distinguished itself from the Western Roman Empire in some significant ways. Byzantium was predominantly Christian, tending more toward Greek culture than Roman, and speaking mostly Greek. Notably, while Christianity was the official state religion of Byzantium, other religions were tolerated, recognized legally, and peacefully coexisted in the culture. This ability to live peacefully with differing views and values may have been the reason that the Byzantine Empire thrived, maintaining for 1,000 years as the Western Roman Empire crumbled with infighting into separate states and kingdoms. The Byzantine Empire was an economic power, Constantinople, being a well-positioned meeting point on the trade routes of the East and the West, was the heart of the trade economy. It was the furthermost western point of the Silk Road from the east, and the bridge to the east from the west. In 330, Constantine moved the seat of the empire to Constantinople. From that point, the ruling patriarch of the city crowned the emperors, resulting in a very close relationship between those in power and the Eastern Church. This practice went unprotested until the crowning of Charlemagne as Imperator Augustus in 800. This was the first time that there was an emperor of both Eastern and Western empires. This was the beginning of a progressive estrangement of the two worlds. The East more established and Hellenized, the Western regions younger, rural, independent of a single political or religious authority, and more culturally Latinized. One of the most marked legacies of the Byzantine Empire is the Corpus Juris Civilis, the codified Roman law. This is the law that most of the Western world operated by until the 19th century, and is certainly the foundation of the most contemporary laws of Western civilization. These laws were the achievement of Justinian the Great, who reigned during Byzantium's peak, 527 to 565. It's speculated that the dove from the Attarouthi treasure comes from this era of Byzantium. Justinian recognized the divergent currents among the many religions in the empire as a weakness and strove to bring about greater religious unity. However, this attitude reflected that of imperial attitude. Unity of the empire came before everything else. Therefore, Justinian the Great's legacy is one of religious suppression. Christian culture began to take over during the 6th century, further removing the remnant of Greco-Roman culture. During the 7th century, the empire experienced a series of wars and losses that left them vulnerable to Muslim forces, and the Arabs took control of many areas, including Syria, giving them access to Asia Minor. Constantinople was not well protected from attacks and fell susceptible to Anatolian raids, rumored to have cut the population of the city in half. Asia Minor transitioned to a theme system, with their own armies and their own authority, which by the 7th century became complete imperial governance. 8th and 9th century Byzantium is marked by religious feuds and division over iconoclasm, which is essentially the argument regarding icons. An oversimplification of icons is that they are artistic images of saints or religious figures that are being worshipped. In the latter 9th century, the Macedonian dynasty began to rise and produce some of the most effective Byzantine emperors in history, and the empire experienced a resurgence. However, these centuries were also plagued by wars with the Arabs and the Bulgarians. These wars occurred for almost 3 centuries, through 1018. In 1025, the Byzantine Empire's expanse ran from the northern point of Armenia to the southern point of Italy. The theme system began to fail. In the empire, there was extreme tension between Constantinople and Rome. The Normans and the Turks advanced, and the First Crusade began. Byzantium experienced one last great resurgence in the 12th century, under Komnenian rule, experiencing population growth, which led to urbanization, an increase in trade and economy, and an agricultural boom. It would be the last resurgence of the empire. The cultural tensions that the empire had kept manageable for the last 800 years erupted in a 6-year civil war. As the Byzantine Empire was distracted by infighting, the Ottoman Empire began its rise, and on the 2nd of April, 1453, the Ottomans invaded an already devastated Constantinople, and the city fell, bringing the 1,000-year reign of the Byzantine Empire to an anticlimactic and permanent end on May 29th. While the best-known, lasting legacy of the Byzantine Empire is the codification of the Roman law, the lesser-discussed and equally lasting legacy is that of religious advancement. Byzantium is the center of historical orthodoxy, and the continually redefined borders of the empire in the 7th century are said to be directly linked to the progress of Islam. The same thing that made them a hub for trade made them a natural conduit for cultural diffusion. This, combined with their relative religious tolerance, enabled them to make a lasting impact on the spread of 2 major world religions. Notably absent, the Jews, who were ever present, though often oppressed. The significance of these pieces of art, like the Attarouthi dove and the other art of this era, is that while the work may have been made for one religious community, it could have easily been made by another. And often under-discussed is that while Byzantium lived peacefully and within its borders, held these major religions, and in among the religions there was a great fragmentation. It's actually really incredible to think that the scroll that the poem read on in the opening of this podcast was written on is a scroll that served as a translation of a Jewish text in the 2nd century, to be preserved by both Christians and Jews through the 7th century, only to be scraped and reused to preserve the Jewish traditions of the 6th century. This dove certainly hung at the front of an Eastern church, but is now a symbol of a great empire, whose art offers us insight into one of the most significant ports and eras of the Western civilization, the great Byzantine Empire.